Hey guys, Hanor here. Recently I was asked how do I aim so well from one of my followers, and I answered this question, but I was feeling that I probably couldn't answer it fully without really showing in detail how I do some of this. So I've decided to go out and make a video on it to best answer this question, because I do use a lot of different techniques. A lot that I've learned in my military service, as well as, certain things that I've read about and experience as well from the game. So utilizing these all together in combination is my methods for aiming. Now, before I move on into my first initial setting of aim, I want to discuss about a few factors, and that is angles of attack. Now, whenever I say angles of attack, I don't mean angle attack of the airplane itself. I'm talking about whether you're approaching the enemy from the front, rear, above, sides, and everything like that. Because basically, if you're going head to head, that's a whole different aiming, method than if you're right on somebody's tail in pure pursuit, or if you're giving off some kind of deflection shots. So basically, that's really the three summed up groups that, I'm going to discuss about. Now, basically, the head-on as well as the pure pursuit are very similar, but there's some details that obviously need to be mentioned. Now, one, I always try to avoid head-ons whenever possible, because, you can easily get down just as well as you down the other guy, and to me, that puts you out of the action much faster. There's rare occasions when I do head-ons. It's when I'm forced normally, but this guide's more about the aiming. Now, when entering a head-on, the trick to aiming in this situation is to treat it like you're doing a pure pursuit, directly shooting at a target. However, you want to start engaging sooner. The maximum gun range that I engage with for pure pursuits is about half a mile. So in a head-on, I will typically start shooting at more than double this range, which I normally start shooting at 1.25 miles out. Or sometimes even further, depending on how fast the closure rate is. Like if in 2 jets, I can end up starting shooting at 1.5 miles out. But my rule of thumb for this is to actually try to engage at a point to where you think that the target's going to reach that point within 3 to 5 seconds. Any longer than 3 to 5 seconds is just going to give them way too much time to avoid the shots. And normally they're going to be ready and waiting for that shot anyway, so really the closer the better, or the less time the better. However, any further than that, you're risking yourself not being able to get out of the way of their shots. Now, if this was real world, I would say let's move on to the subject of sight picture. However, the game actually already sets your sight picture for you by default, so we can skip that and let's talk about point of aim. Now, your point of aim is going to be based off of what your convergence is set at, actually. Nobody that has different convergences is going to have the same point of aim on the target. So in my videos, from what you see, is because my point of aim, or my convergence, I should say, is set to 400 meters. So my point of aim is based off of this. Now, the image above relates to sniper rifles, not aircraft. However, I like the up-down curve versus the level then drop curves that you'll find out there. And the reason why I like this is because it goes along more with my military training. And basically what this is showing in this curve is that whenever you're sighted in for a really close range, such as, let's say, 200 meters for instance, and let's say that your bullets travel at the same velocity until about 400 or 500 meters, then they start losing velocity, then you're going to have this up and down curve kind of effect. Now, if you're going extreme ends, such as 800 meter targeting distance, you're probably going to see more of that linear line. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you're aiming at a target that's below your set range, then probably your rounds are actually going higher than your sight. So as an example for me, my target's aim point is set for 400 meters, which is a quarter of a mile. If I'm shooting at a target that's closer than a quarter of a mile, then I actually need to move the sight below my target, because my rounds are actually going above my sight. Now this being said, let's talk about point of aim on deflection shots. With deflection shots, there's two ways to aim. You can either lead your target or you can trap your target. Leading your target is a method where you aim ahead where you are estimating that your rounds will hit, and you begin firing at that point while keeping your aim point relatively in that same position ahead of the target. Trapping, however, is wherever you aim at a point ahead of the target, and once you begin firing, you just leave your point there and let the target actually go through where you're aiming. And this is a method that's normally done for targets that you're not fully sure of how fast they're going and where to actually lead. Works really well in War Thunder against really high speed targets. And to help better this aim, you're going to have to master, whenever you are aiming for a deflection shot, at identifying the flight path of the enemy aircraft. In fact, this is actually true for all shots, including head-ons, pure pursuit shots, and deflection shots. It's trying to figure out exactly where the enemy aircraft is heading towards. Now, since we're firing automatic weapons, let's talk about walking to the target. Now, looking at any of my episodes, you can look and watch, and this is what I actually do. I pick my target, I try to lead the target to where I think he's going to be, I place my pipper in that position, and I begin firing. Once I start firing, I am no longer looking at the pipper anymore. Now, I may keep a relevance of the target, or the pipper to the target, but I do not keep my eye on the pipper anymore. Now I keep my eye on the ball, as it were. I've watched the target. I'm looking at the target, and I'm noticing where the rounds are going towards the target. If they are going to be going low or high, and sometimes it's hard to tell, but that is what I do. I pay attention to this, and I make adjustments based on this. If my rounds are falling short, I begin to push the pipper up, which is walking the rounds up towards my target. If it's going above, then I hold it there or pull it down, depending on, deflections or not. And this is going to be a tricky part, but that's a really, in a really practiced kind of method, it'll take time to get used to. Also, once I start engaging the target, I try to predict any maneuvers that he's going to make based on the aircraft that he's in. Such as, if he's in a German aircraft, a lot of times they like to roll. They like to do spins and spirals and all kinds of things like that to throw you off. And those are a little bit tricky, but I like to keep that in mind so that the second he starts pulling off, I'm a little bit prepared for it. It helps with my adjustments. Whereas if he's in an aircraft that's a turn burner, he's probably going to try to do some kind of turning, and normally they try to do a slice turn, which is downward and makes it much harder to follow. Once they do a slice, I actually aim below the enemy aircraft where I think he's going to be, because normally they keep going downward, which means that, if you're expecting a linear, progression, you're not going to meet hits. You're going to have to aim a little bit below that. Alright, it's time to move on to my final subject, and that is going to be about the vector of the aircrafts. Aircrafts are different. Certain aircraft at high speeds still have a negative vector, some of them have a neutral vector, and some have positive vectors. In saying this is all in relation to the gun sight. Now, a way to see this is to go to your virtual cockpit and look for the little tiny dot with the little tiny wings and the tail. As you can see in this magnified issue, that's sitting right above the gun sight, right below the mouse circle to the right, just a hair. And the reason this is important is because sometimes when you're in an aircraft that has a high vector at higher speeds, you're going to notice that when you start to engage the target, that your rounds are actually floating above the target, even more so, like in that pass-through right there. Now, if I had a neutral or a negative vector that is more commonplace to most aircraft, I would not have missed in those shots. However, if you are aware that you are giving a positive vector, then you can adapt and lead more accordingly and get your hits. Now in this video, I've basically brought to you guys every aspect that I use and utilize to engage my targets. And it's okay to pick and choose some of these aspects and everything. However, I recommend that you guys get out of your comfort zone once in a while and practice some of these other methods that might be a little bit harder or you're less used to. This can only make you a better pilot in the long run, and it also makes you more adaptable based on the situations, because I don't always do the exact same things for every situation. It's all dependent on what's going on around me and what's going on ahead of me, as well as my airspeed and so forth. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, give me the big thumbs up and subscribe for future content to come. Also guys, try to follow me on Twitter. My name is @Hanor Gaming. I'm new to Twitter, so bear with me on that. Alright guys, good luck out there and good hunting. They were used for ground strike missions, as well as to help make plans for jet attacks against bomber formations. Now that effort alone actually did a very big payday for the Allies during the war, but outside of that,